Okay, so we are here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. I am Jetsa Belcerna, and today we will be discussing the challenging topic of vulnerability disclosure. Our speakers will share their experiences from the perspective of those who find and report the vulnerabilities. So I would like to welcome Yashin. He works as a security consultant at Exivia and has over 8 years of experience in the field of embedded system security. His main interests include finding vulnerabilities in common IoT devices and testing their security. In his free time, he enjoys traveling, taking photos, baking, and reading. Then we have Ramiro Pareja, is a principal security consultant at IO Active. He has extensive experience in hardware security. He has successfully applied attacks like fall injection and side channel attacks to improve the security of automotive systems. Welcome, and the stage is yours.
Thanks, Jezebel. So, welcome to our talk. It's about challenges in automotive vulnerability disclosure. Um, just a brief intro. There's also quite a good intro which covers all the base that I was looking for. So maybe in this slide I'll talk about why I'm interested in hacking things, and especially automotive. Um, when Ramiro and I started this research, we were looking for things that we could hack remotely. And then we thought, okay, what's the most impact we would have? And then we decided, hey, cars are pretty good. And that's how we came to this site. Ramiro, do you want to go?
Yeah, hello. I am Ramiro Pareja, and I don't know what to say about myself. I have been interested in automotive for quite some time, and I have to say that I think it's a very interesting moment because we are seeing how the cars move from being a system which was isolated to now to be one of the most connected devices we can own with a lot of connectivity interfaces. So this, I think, brings a lot of challenges and a lot of interesting topics for researchers like us.
So, just as an introduction about how we started this, in February 2020, we identified multiple automotive security vulnerabilities. And while we found those, we were quite interested in making sure that these vulnerabilities were reported to the right parties. The coordinated disclosure process, unfortunately, is already taking more than 3 years at this point. And we say it is taking because it's still ongoing for quite a few things. In this presentation, we want to share some of the challenges we encountered and the lessons that we learned while disclosing these vulnerabilities. Our hope is that with this presentation, we could help other researchers to save time and frustration when disclosing their findings. These lessons are shared towards the end of the presentation and are not necessarily limited to automotive, but of course, there is an automotive context because all the findings that we are talking about in this presentation are within the automotive space. So, in 2019, we started a research with the intention of obtaining a better picture of automotive security. Our goal was to analyze as many devices as possible, and we want to look for high impact vulnerabilities while investing the minimum effort. What this means is that attacks such as fault injection and side channel, which are very interesting and very important to the security maturity of a device, or to understand the security maturity of a device, it usually takes quite a bit of time to set up, and it requires more effort than what we were looking at. So while we had experience in those fields, we wanted to focus on attacks that we could do with less effort. But we also want to make sure those findings had quite a high impact. So within that context, we are looking at different targets. So the targets that we were looking at were connected automotive devices, so telematics boxes, OBD2 dongles, mobile apps, and later this also extended to the backends of those devices. We'll discuss later how that came to be. The interesting thing is that the research still continues. Until date, we have found more than a dozen discrete systems that are vulnerable to various attacks. And these are more than a dozen different vendors in some cases. We wrote a white paper about this and with some results, and this was presented at SCAR 2022 in Berlin. So this is the extended abstract with some of our findings. And we only presented some of our findings at SCAR 2022 because, yeah, we were still validating some of the others. This talk is connected to that talk by the fact that that talk focused more on the technical aspects, what we identified, how we identified it, the reverse engineering process, etc. And later, this presentation is going to be about what were the issues we faced while disclosing those findings to the vendors involved. The vulnerabilities were obviously disclosed before publishing the white paper. We didn't want the fact that they had a critical vulnerability in their system to be a surprise and something that they learned through a white paper rather than through the security context. So we reached out to every vendor involved, but we got differing responses. We had a very good response in terms of Movistar, allowing us to disclose it properly and also patch it as quickly as they could. We had two not so good examples, one of which was embedded component vendor called Quectel for modems, and one of which was the HopeCharts HQT 401 telematics box. Just a second, it seems like my system is moving forward with the slide, so sometimes you might see the slide go forward and back. I apologize for that. As I was saying, the bad and the ugly are what we'll focus on, but we do bring out the good response so that you can see how it should be, and then you can see how it really should not be. So let's talk about the good. Movistar is a major telecommunications provider in Spain, and they provide an OBD2 dongle. So this dongle is supposed to be connected to the OBD2 port on your vehicle and provides various features. So it can provide a Wi-Fi hotspot through its LTE service. It provides a GPS tracker to see if your car is stolen or where your car is. It also offers anti-theft services. So if your car is lost somewhere or it's stolen, you can track it down. It also has e-call service or emergency call service. So from that perspective, it has a lot of features, and for Ramiro and I, the more features it has, the higher the attack surfaces. We found vulnerabilities that allowed vehicle impersonation and remote control of the dongle and potentially the vehicle itself. This included MITM attacks. This included attacks on the backend. And the disclosure process was smooth and professional. There was a clear communication channel to report security incidents, and the email address that we were supposed to contact was published on the website. So even from the very beginning, we knew who to contact. There was a single person responsible for the entire disclosure process, and the rest, the team was very responsive. It was usually less than a day in terms of responses if you sent emails, and it was less than 1 month for the entire disclosure. From the proactive team perspective, most issues were already identified and patched. So when we actually disclosed to Movistar, they already informed us that some of the issues were already known to them, and by the time we disclosed, it had already been patched. From our perspective, Movistar has good cybersecurity policies, and the processes to deal with vulnerabilities are already there. The timeline for this was that in Q4 2020, there were vulnerabilities found by us, and it took us some time to contact them, mainly because we were verifying the findings, and there were other research projects going on at the same time. We reached out to the vendor on August 2021 And by September 2021, the vendor confirmed the issues were remediated. This is a very fast turnaround time, and we were quite impressed by this. Then we move on to the worse aspect of disclosure process. So the Quectel RM500Q 5G modem. This is a 5G telecommunication module that's present in many IoT and automotive devices. And we identified a command injection in the AT command parser. So in this context, you would need physical access, or you would need to be in the same logical area as the module, and you should be able to send AT commands to the module. Our finding was that there was a command injection vulnerability in the AT command parser, and if this was exploited, gaining runtime control of the CPU was possible. This vulnerability was confirmed specifically in the RM500Q of the RM500Q model of the family, but it should potentially affect the entire product family. What's interesting was that these types of vulnerabilities were already disclosed before in their other modems. So I was curious to see if we could find those in this particular model as well. The disclosure process was unfortunately not professional. There were no clear communication channels to report security incidents. General info email was used to initiate the conversation. So we reached out to, I believe, sales at Quectel.com or something similar. And the team was very slow in responding. There was no response until the third contact attempt 2 months later. And even after we managed to contact them, there was no feedback. And when we reached out via subsequent emails, we did not get a response. We were ignored. From our side, we are assuming that Quectel probably had no proper cybersecurity policies and process in place, which leads to issues like this, and also probably much higher risks that we are not really seeing from the outside. If you look at disclosure timelines, we identified the vulnerabilities in Q1 of 2021. And then, again, it took some time as we were busy with some other projects. The first attempt to contact Quectel was in October 2021. We did not receive a response for that. We tried again a month later. That was in November 2021. And we still did not receive a response. In December 2021, we tried for the third time. At that point, Quectel replied, and we were able to share the vulnerability details with Quectel. No more responses were received from Quectel. There was a fourth attempt to get contact and feedback on the January of 2022. And in June of 2022, we tried again. But by then, NNS researchers, who we discuss in the next slide, independently identify the same vulnerability in a different modem, and they got a CVE assigned to it. So NNS researchers identified this vulnerability independently, and they obtained the CVE 2022 26147. What we found interesting was that they spent around 4 or 5 months, but they once they did not get feedback, they essentially notified the vendor about the imminent public disclosure, and they just published anyway. Later, we talk about what we can learn from this and what this means to us. But we were quite impressed by how quickly NNS moved, and a lot of the good research that they put out in general. Another thing we found while preparing this presentation is that in August 2023, Quectel now has a form to report security incidents. So if you have any vulnerabilities, or if you have found any vulnerabilities in their code base, they have a way for you to reach out to them and disclose it. And that's good to have. That shows some progress. And then we go to the bad. And this was one of our worst experiences in disclosure. And this was about the Hope Chart telematics box. So this is created by a company called Hope Chart, and the product is called the HQT 401. And it's an Android-based telematics box with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and 4G. This seems to be factory installed by at least one vehicle manufacturer and sold as aftermarket separately. We found the device of Taobao, and then we reverse engineered the device. Based on the product description and based on what we can find from the firmware that we reverse engineered, it's used for fleet control. So location, diagnosis, or remote control, these are all options that are available through this device. We saw references in the code for can sniffing and can injection. Later, we talk about why we did not try to inject can packets directly. So, the finding. This was Act 1. So we essentially got the device and then we reverse engineered it. The SCAR presentation has more details, and we might be presenting at another conference this year about exactly how we found it and what the vulnerabilities were later on this year. But for now, the main finding was that we were able to impersonate any vehicle in the fleet. We were able to get the position and telemetry of the entire fleet at the same time. And we were also potentially able to remote control the vehicle. This is through features that are already present in the firmware. And as I mentioned earlier, we could not safely see if we are able to do that without potentially hurting people. But we did verify that we could send arbitrary packets coming from any device to the server. So this is a video that we recorded back in 2022 about how the dashboard looked when we were analyzing the backend of this particular service. Keep in mind that this was in 2022, and this dashboard was what we created based on us reverse engineering the device and finding the backend service. So as you can see, we are able to see the precise locations, and we are also able to see the information from those devices. So in this case, you can see the ICC ID, we can see the odometer levels, we can see the runtime, and we can see the speed. So this should give you a bit of context about what it was and essentially what the impact of the finding was. So in terms of impact, we initially counted 4,000 to 5,000 vehicles as affected. Sany, who is the equipment manufacturer, confirmed later that at least 60,000 vehicles are affected by this. Sany is the third largest heavy equipment manufacturer in the world, and we suspect that other vendors are also affected, that we just haven't found the right server for that. But as you can imagine, the scope of this is pretty bad. So initially, we tried to disclose this by ourselves. So we reached out to HopeChart, and it was frustrating, to say at the least. We could not find any contact channel in the English web pages that they have. We did find a commercial email and a phone number that was shown on the Chinese website. Multiple emails, both in Chinese and English, were sent, but all were ignored. We, with the help of a friend, called and we attempted to talk to them in Chinese to get in touch with the marketing team. But the marketing team essentially told us that they would call us back with the technical stuff, but they never called back. In 9 months, when we were trying to disclose this by ourselves, they never responded. As far as we know, HopeChart has no cybersecurity policies or process at all. So in terms of timeline, in Q2 2021, the vulnerabilities were found. In Q3 2021, first attempts to contact the vendor by email. As you can imagine, we tried to disclose as soon as we found this because of the severity of these findings. In February of 2022, we tried again to contact the vendor by email. And in June of 2022, we tried to contact the vendor by phone. As mentioned earlier, the marketing department took our contact data and promised that R&D would call back. They never did. And Act 3, what happens when you travel with friends? So, can you imagine the damage that could a malicious actor could cause by taking control of 60,000 heavy vehicles? So frustrated and worried, we contacted ASRG for help. And ASRG contacted HopeChart and Sani without any luck. After that, ASRG China succeeded in contacting the vendors. So the timeline for that was in August 2022, we asked ASRG for help. September 2022, ASRG tries to contact HopeChart and Sani with no response. In November of 2022, we partially disclosed in SCAR Europe. And in November 2022, ASRG China successfully gets involved and successfully contacts both vendors. And what did that result in? HopeChart and Sani works on fixing the issue, and they took around half a year due to the high number of affected vehicles, and they finally informed us that all the T boxes were patched, and a CVE was assigned for this vulnerability. So the timeline for that goes around in December 2022. The vendors inform us that they have started to fix the issues. And in June of 2023, the vulnerabilities were patched according to the vendor. And around the same time, the CVE was assigned. And that was the end of that story. Or is it? There was some unfinished business. And like malignant spirits, vulnerabilities hang around. Just while we were preparing for this presentation, we thought, hey, might as well check again and show how the patch process looked. And the patch appears to be incomplete. 60,000 trucks and cranes are still vulnerable, despite the evidences we sent. Sani claims that they patched it. Let me quickly share my screen and show how that looks like. So we have a script that essentially connects to the system. And if everything goes right and the demo gods are kind, we should start seeing output here like you saw in the video. And so this is live, by the way. We are connected to the backend server. And yeah, if the demo gods are kind, we should start seeing some vehicles just like that. So each of these dots is a vehicle that we can definitely get information from and potentially even control if we decide to be malicious. So as you can see, it's still vulnerable. This is live data that we are seeing right now. And within less than a minute, these are the number of vehicles that are present. And if you leave it running, then we see even more. I'm going to go back to the screen. So generally, the ASRG contact in China reported the vulnerability to CAVD, which is the China Automobile Vulnerability Database. They notified the vendors, and the vendors have 3 months to fix the issue or face sanctions. So our question is, did Sani claim that they fixed the issue to avoid sanctions? What we tried to do was that after this, we essentially spammed all the vendors' emails and LinkedIn accounts we found online because, as you can imagine, this is a very critical vulnerability and something that could still be exploited at this point. So, more than anything else, we just hope that this will be patched. And with that, I hand over the slides to Ramiro.
Sorry, I was mute. Yes, thank you, Yassin. Let me share now. Okay, good. Okay, so after this introduction, and after explaining three different cases of or three different scenarios of disclosing vulnerabilities, one which went very good, one which went not so good, and one which went terrible, let's say, pretty bad. We want to share some of the things we learned. So when we started this research, and the disclosure of the vulnerabilities we identified, we knew it was going to be a frustrating process. It was going to be a long process, quite frustrating, because automotive security is something relatively new. So we know that many organizations, they are not adapted to the challenges and that these that cybersecurity threats could pose. So we knew that maybe these companies are not organized; they don't have people responsible of dealing with these situations. So we were expecting a lot of trial and error in the process, but that's fine. We learn many things by doing this. So some of the things we want to share with you that we learned is that there is still a lot of things to be done to improve the automotive cybersecurity, the organization's policies. I think this comes with no surprise, as everybody is more or less right now implementing all these cybersecurity processes. Um, it's also no surprise, I guess, for a lot of people if I tell you that many vendors they were responding. Okay, they were like ignoring the issues until it was too late. So the way they treat the security incidents is just ignoring until the damage is done, and then they try to remediate the damage. I think that this is also no surprise. But what I think was a big surprise for us is that this happens even when there are big safety concerns related to the products. We were really frustrated after trying to communicate to, in this case, to Sunny, for example, that they have a lot of vehicles which can be controlled remotely, and they were just ignoring us. Um, and there were many other vendors that were doing the same, and this was pretty shocking for us. Uh, we also learned that it's important to have some partners. In this case, we partnered with ASGR, um, which helped us to the disclosure. I think that we will not be able to contact these Chinese vendors if we were not having the support. So it's very important to have this help from somebody with more experience in this kind of disclosures. Yeah. And something also that we were a bit surprised is that even if you disclosure a big vulnerability, you have a CVE, this does not mean that the vendor is going to patch it properly. They are going to do the minimum work sometimes to just, in this case, get rid of legal consequences, let's say. So I would like to give 5 tips to those vendors that are here listening to us. So tips that I think that could improve your the disclosure process, or the process to receive incidents or reports of incidents, security incidents. So the first one is please have a clear communication channel to report these security incidents. It has to be easy to use, like an email or a form in a website. It cannot be like a phone, calling a phone number and then having to go through a menu system to find a technical person to report, especially if it's a different language that you don't really understand. Um, it should be easy to find this communication channel, like being published in the website, not having to ask 20 different person in the organizations to find out what is the channel to communicate and report these incidents. And yeah, it should be important to have this information in the website. also in English, because we found out that quite often the information is just in Chinese or the local language, and we cannot figure it out easily. So also, don't ignore an incident report, because the problem does not disappear. So if you receive a security incident report, just don't look to a different place and pretend nothing happens, because next thing you will find out is after few months maybe that a malicious attacker could just exploit this vulnerability, or maybe even the researcher that tried to reach you out to disclosure this issue. If you just ignore him, maybe this researcher will just make a non-coordinated disclosure, publishing this in a congress, or putting it online, whatever, which could be even more dangerous because this information will be public immediately, and you will have not enough time to remediate it. You have to act fast. If you receive this incident report, you should immediately work on that, give it maximum priority. Okay, well, not maximum priority, give the priority that it deserves. Ideally, you should fix the issue in less than 1 month. This is what we believe, and I think that we believe that 3 months should be the maximum, because 3 months is a long window of time where you are exposed to these vulnerabilities, and you can be your organization can suffer a lot of danger, a lot of damage if somebody finds this and exploit this. If you cannot fix an issue in less than 3 months, maybe you have to consider how do you work, and you have to identify the bottleneck. Maybe you have to grow the security team or the development team. Maybe you have to improve all the process of certifying the patches and testing them, or maybe you have to create a proper infrastructure to update remotely the vulnerabilities. Yeah, you have to find out what is the problem, why you cannot fix this in less than 3 months. Sometimes it's impossible to do it in less than 3 months, but ideally should be. Okay. You need to be proactive. Don't just sit down and wait until somebody reports a vulnerability. You have to test your own products with your own internal team, or maybe hire external company to do this. It's always recommended to have also. Ideally, you should have an internal team and also use external services to help you, because this prevents bias. It prevents you from tunnel vision. If you use your internal team, maybe the internal team has some bias and they will not find some vulnerabilities. Uh, it's important to have the internal team, to have some researchers, security researchers in the company, that they can develop new products and test new protections against those. So they can develop new attacks on your products and test some protections for those attacks. And finally, it's also recommended to have a bug bounty program. So um, researchers can submit issues they find, instead of selling those issues to 0 days program or malicious actors, let's say, to other companies or to malicious actors. Finally, it's important um, to develop a self-training, to develop a training program for your own company. So your team develops these cybersecurity capabilities. Everybody in the company should be trained on cybersecurity, and not just only the technical people. Also, for example, the managers and just the regular staff, because everybody is susceptible to be attacked using social engineering or using phishing attacks. And yeah, having some background on cybersecurity can help to take some decisions for those managers responsible of defining the policies and the processes. Okay, one more tip, very important. Please appreciate the work that researchers like us is doing. We are not the enemy. We want to help you. Don't sue us. That's very important, because today we found out that we got a threat from another automotive vendor. It's not one of the ones we discussed today, a different one. They threat us with illegal actions when we were trying to disclose responsibly the issue we found. Yes, please don't. We are not the enemy. We are helping you, and if today we found the issue, maybe tomorrow, if you don't act, somebody will do it, and they will have worse intentions than we do. Please don't waste our time, because we are doing this for free. We don't get paid for this. Um, so just appreciate the time we are giving to you. So, for example, don't put strain conditions to disclose the information, to disclose the vulnerability, like having to fill to fill a form 20 different times, just writing the same email to two or three different persons. Please just adapt to our needs, because yeah. Uh, we move fast to the different vulnerabilities. After we find a vulnerability, we want to move to the next one. We don't get anything just staying with the same vulnerability, so we will move to the next one. If you don't try to contact us soon, maybe we forget the details, so we are not interested anymore in helping you. So try to be fast. Okay. And if there is any researcher in the audience, we have also 5 tips for you. Take it easy. It's going to be very frustrating. Don't take it personal. Companies can react different ways. Sometimes will ignore you. So just don't get stressed because you are not listened. Always disclose responsibly, respecting the law, especially because you can have, like we had today, a situation that they can threat you legally. So it's important to give a reasonable amount of time for fixing the issues, and always try to be yeah, to do a joint disclosure with the vendors if you want to disclose the vulnerabilities. uh, Use the efficient communication channel. Try to find which is the most suitable one. Normally you find this information in websites, or you have a form. If you don't find that, use a LinkedIn to find who is in the company working and who can be the most appropriate person to contact. In LinkedIn, people put the roles, so maybe you can find somebody in the cybersecurity department or the closest thing you can find. If you are not sure to who you have to who to contact, just start to spam everybody. This is what we did recently with Sunny and with HopeChat. We start to spam everybody who seems to be slightly technical or to have a small responsibility within the company. When using intermediary contact or organization that is intermediating between the vendor and you, try to be part of the conversations so you know what is going on, and also to minimize the risk of miscommunications. We suspect that maybe the problem why Sunny is not fixing the issues is because they didn't have all the information because we weren't directly telling to them. There was a third party involved. Okay. It's also important to start the disclosure process as soon as possible. Don't wait until, yeah, don't wait too long to do that, because first you will forget the details. Then if you are looking for presenting in some congress, something like that, maybe you run out of time. You don't cannot give any more reasonable window of time to the vendor to fix it, to fix the issues. And yeah, and if you are looking for a CV, you should involve a CNA as soon as possible, by the way. um, A as RG is a CNA, so you have automotive issues you can disclose with them. And yeah, finally, don't be naive. We found out during our disclosure process that some vendors are just ignoring you on purpose or just trying to delay you so they don't have to fix the issue, hoping that you forget about that, or I don't know what is the reason. So if you feel that they are doing this, just consider if you have to disclose the vulnerability unilaterally. Please consider what is best to the final user, to the user of the vehicle, or to, yeah, to the final, yeah, user of this product. If the best is to disclose unilaterally because there is a high danger there, maybe you have to consider to do that. But always try to do it in a responsible way and involving the company as long as you can. Okay, so to finalize, I would like to thanks to John Heldred and to Jun Lee, because they help us with the disclosure process for some of these vulnerabilities. Also, we want to thanks Riskier, because it was the company that support this part of this research, or the early phases of this research. And finally, Stable Diffusions for generating the images that you saw in this presentation, and to promote the stereotypes of hackers with hoodies. So thank you, Stable Diffusion. And that's it. If we have any questions, we will be happy to to answer.
Yes, we have questions. First of all, thank you very much. The presentation is amazing, and I believe that you are giving a very clear message for people involved in developing a vulnerability disclosure program. And for those that do not have one, they really need to take care about it. So we have just time for one or two questions. And I will first show on a stage the question that was upvoted. Did you manage to identify and disclose vulnerabilities in automotive components in the past? How much time, to your experience, it typically takes for the OEM and vendors to patch software inside the ECU?
You want to go, Yassin? Shall I go?
Yeah, I can go a bit. My background is not really in automotive. So yeah, I don't have as much experience in ECU stuff. I've done some fault injection attacks on automotive targets, and I've reverse engineered some automotive targets. But yeah, not enough to draw a conclusion for this. I think Ramiro has way more experience on this one.
Yeah, okay. I think there is two answers for this question. When I work as a in my normal job as a consultant, when I identify vulnerabilities, of course, this is normally a paid job that some companies hiring us for doing. Normally, yeah, this is very fast. Of course, the company is the first one which is paying us for doing this, so it's always pretty fast. But when we identify vulnerabilities, because we are doing some research in our free time as a hobby or whatever, um, yeah, I would say that uh, normally, uh, yeah, I think we have all kind of experience, right? The worst case scenarios is six months to disclose. Sorry, 6 months from the moment that we disclose the vulnerability to they patch it, something like 6 months or even sometimes even longer, because the problem that automotive has is that whenever you touch the software, you have to do a lot of verifications, right? So it takes a lot of time to certify and to verify the firmware. So it takes quite some time. So I think 6 months is the worst case scenarios we have seen. And in some components which are not so critical, like not connected to the critical buses of the vehicle, maybe that normally takes much less. So it's a matter of just 1 month maybe, or even less sometimes. Is sometimes even less. Things like infotainment, for example, normally is fixed very fast because they are normally not critical components, so they are patching them quite fast, right?
Thank
Yeah.
you. So just a final and quick question. When would you have a look on German cars?
Okay, actually, so our original research was we were trying on purpose to avoid to research on cars, on vehicles. Why? Because there was a lot of other researchers looking at cars, so we focus on all those devices that people were not looking at, like T boxes, telematics units, ODB dongles, 5G modems, elements within a car or part of the ecosystem of the automotive ecosystem or the vehicle ecosystem, but not cars, because we consider a lot of people were doing that, right? But maybe the question is, did you look at German or Western devices? Yes, we did, of course, and we have a long list of devices which we are still trying to disclose, affecting American companies, European companies, all kind of companies. The reason why it seems that we have here some focus on Chinese companies, I think it's just because by the time we started with this project, I was working in China, I was living in China, so it was a easy source of easy use. So I think that's the reason why we started with Chinese product. But we found vulnerabilities everywhere, I think. So maybe Yasin can add some some details here.
Yeah. So yeah, like Ramiro mentioned, we have a backlog of devices. So yeah, we just got accepted for another conference this year, and yeah, it's not fully confirmed yet, so that's why I'm being a bit cagey. But I would say our next presentation essentially includes details about vehicles throughout Europe and North America, for example, and also South America. So again, it's components within those vehicles, not the full vehicle itself, but we do have varying levels of access to the vehicle's canvas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our time is up, but just for the audience, our speakers will be available for a few minutes in the lunch. Thanks again. This is very insightful and yeah, very good message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you to you.